All right, cool. So we are back. So in this stream, it's kind of a part two of the stream that I did earlier today, where what we did is we took this transistor.fm registration page and rebuilt it with Tailwind in Vue.js. Well, sort of with Vue.js. We used Vue CLI, but we haven't actually made it interactive yet. So what I figured we would do now is basically make this interactive with Vue. So you can see on this page, you can sort of click through which plan you want to choose and choose whether it's an annual or monthly plan. So I think what I want to do is do the same sort of thing here, where we can actually make this work and sort of componentize some of these parts. And if we have enough time left after we're done that, then maybe we can work on making this responsive, because right now it's a disaster. Okay, so let's take a look at the project and see kind of where we can start cutting it up. So we have this element here, which is the column that contains all this stuff. So I think we could sort of make that like the plan selector component or something. Now, we could just take this whole div and extract that to a plan selector component, but there are some parts of this div that don't feel like they belong in the component, specifically this width. This width is kind of like related to this actual layout more than it is to this actual component. So I think what I'm going to do is create another wrapper div around this whole thing, if we can find where it ends. And we'll stick the width on there. So we'll do width class equals 1/2. And this way the plan selector itself will just be kind of like adaptive. It'll just change to accommodate the width of its container instead of having a width kind of hard-coded into it. So now we can get rid of this width here. And if we refresh here, make sure everything's kind of wired up and serving, then that looks right. Just to double check that we actually are seeing our changes, why don't we give this a width of like 3/4 for a second and see that everything breaks, and it does. Okay, cool, so everything is working. So I think what we can do now is create a new Vue component and start by just ripping out this template. So in the components directory, I'm going to create a file called planSelector.vue. And we'll scaffold this out as a Vue component and see what we can do. So let's grab all this stuff, everything from here down to here. I guess I gotta select every character and save and drop that in here. Fix this indentation. And we'll just leave this as kind of like empty for now. And now here in this file, let's import, should this be outdented? I don't know. Import plan selector from components, plan selector.vue. Guess we don't really need the .vue extension. I don't know what the best practice is around that. Okay, so if we register the plan selector here, then with any luck, we should see right now there is no plan selector. But if we just go and drop in a plan selector, then we should see it pop in. And it does, cool. All right, so that's part one of this process. Let's work on getting the actual thing to work. So I think what we should do is think about how we can break this thing out into multiple components too. Specifically, like each one of these cards, I kind of feel like should be a separate component. And that way we can avoid a lot of the repetitive HTML structure and class names. I don't know how many people are here, by the way. The chat is silent, but it looks like 61 people. So if you're hanging out watching the stream, feel free to say hello in the chat or if you have any questions. Okay, so let's create a new component. Why don't we just call it a I think we are safe to use single word components. There's a best practice somewhere about like your custom components should always be 2 words to avoid colliding with future HTML, like real HTML elements. But it's fine. I think we could either just call it plan, or we could call it plan card, maybe. Plan card.view, just to be totally safe. Scaffold out a view component here. Grab the starter card and paste that in. And then what we should maybe do is just figure out what the best way to sort of templatize this is, so we can pass some of this information in. So let's think. There's a couple things that we're going to want to do for sure, like probably the plan name and the price, right? So now something I was thinking about actually is each plan actually has 2 prices. There's a monthly price and a yearly price. So we could just pass in price, but I kind of think we should pass in 2 values, monthly and yearly, because nothing else changes. So why don't we do something like props. I tend to not do prop validation. Don't get mad at me, Vue professionals. But something like plan card, like a name, like a monthly amount, and we'll just start with those 2 for now. Cool. So we'll just do plan name. And this will be monthly. And why don't we import that component here? What do we decide to do on indentation? Flatten that against the edge there? Is that what we did in the plan selector too? Yeah, okay. Cool, so we'll import plan card from /plan card and register some components. And that's the wrong place to do it. We want to do that in the plan selector. Oh, I think my mouse just died. What's going on here? I got another mouse, no problem. Oh, it looks like it's back. Yeah, it's back. Okay, cool. I'll just replace this here. And then here, we don't need any of this stuff. Okay. All right, let's drop one in at the top here. So we'll just drop in a plan card. And we'll add a name is starter and monthly is 19. I guess we can make, we're not going to be doing any math on it. It's just for presentation. So it's probably actually safer to do it as a string for now, because you won't have weird floating point stuff going on. Okay, so I think we made a mistake and put this in the wrong container. So we're actually missing part of the template here. This has to go up there. We need another closing div. And this really wants to indent that way. So maybe we will let them indent that way. It's just weird that it doesn't want to do that on this one. Okay, yeah, it does. And what about here? All right. Indentation is all cleaned up. Although I think I prefer it flattened. Okay, let's see what we have now. Okay, so now we got a duplicate. So I think we can probably delete the one that's hard-coded and work on making the other ones work. You could use a computed property, but the only reason that would work in this case is because there happens to be like some math for figuring out the discount, where that the discount might not always be consistent. So I think it's better to just allow people to specify it explicitly. Okay, so let's add the professional one too. And now we'll see like we have this situation where this one shouldn't actually be selected, right? So the styles should be different based on whether it's selected or not. So why don't we first work on getting that working. So trying to think what the absolute best way to do this would be. Yeah, number of downloads will change too. I think we'll look at maybe doing that as like a slot, because I feel like all the features could possibly be customizable. But for now, I'm just trying to think through what the best way to actually handle the sort of selected state is here. I think we could probably just do something like that, like selected equals, we'll just hard code it to true, and then selected equals false. And then we can kind of get that working. So this will have a selected prop. And then we can make some decisions about some stuff here. So this div that shows the icon, this should only be there if it's actually selected. We could use vif or vshow here, really. Probably vshow is going to be more performant. So let's just only show that if it's selected. Let's see where that gets us. Nothing, eh? vshow equals selected. Selected. Selected true, selected false. Let's do a little bit. Oh, now it's there. So weird. I'm seeing such weird behavior here sometimes. Okay, no big deal. Okay, the next thing is whether or not we should have a background. I think there was also like an opacity thing, right? Yeah, so we'll have to think about that too. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this class out. I'm only going to keep the classes here that are meant to be here all the time. And any classes that are sort of conditional, I'm going to bind in a class kind of custom attribute here. And for this sort of stuff, since we might be adding multiple classes at a time, and we're only doing it based on the selected state, I think using array syntax is probably a good way to go. Actually, you know what? We could just do it using raw strings too. Array is fine though. It looks a little cleaner with the, you don't have so many quotes banged up against each other. Okay, so basically we want to say if it's selected, then we want some classes, otherwise we want some other classes. Something like that, yeah. So if it's selected, we want BG Navy Dark. If it's not selected, well, first let's just see. Okay, so that gets us a little bit closer, but we don't have the hover state, right? Or the opacity. So let's grab that stuff from this one. So opacity and the hover state. This should be there if it's not selected. So that's kind of our alternate state. Cool. I think I'm happy with that. So let's rip out this professional one. And we'll add the small business one too. And it's got a monthly of 99. And we can grab these numbers again later. So for now, let's just revel in the fact that we've simplified this a little bit. Okay. So we can't actually select them though. So a couple things we could think to do. We could either do like the feature ability to change that, changing the yearly or changing the selectors. Yeah, we should do cursor pointer for the cards, or alternatively just make them buttons, which is probably the better thing to do. So let's try that right now. Let's just make this div a button, type button. If it's clickable, it should be a button. That's basically the rule when it comes to accessibility. Now this is kind of odd that we're getting this center alignment happening. I guess that's because by default buttons have text align center. Yeah. So let's just add text left to undo that. Okay. So now we have kind of behaves like a button, which is better. You get the right cursor for free. You get the focus ability for free, which is good. Yeah. Okay, so what should we do next? Also, this sucks that we're getting... Oh yeah, this is grim. This has to be block and width full. That's the other thing that sucks about buttons. There we go. All right. So now the thing about customizing the feature list that is kind of a bummer to me is I don't want to just like have people pass in the number of downloads. There's no reason we couldn't do that in this case, but I think a more general solution is to make it easy to specify the features for each plan kind of separately, right? The thing that is a bit of a bummer is we kind of have to duplicate this markup every time if we wanted to do that, right? So we could say like slot name equals features, and then we could grab this content and we could stick this in here, slot equals features. So you're kind of always playing this game of trade-offs between like how customizable do I want it versus how much am I willing to duplicate. So now we get all that stuff back, but there's no like simple way for us to change these classes on all of them, right? So first, let's just go ahead and fix these numbers. So it should be 15,000 and 45,000. You could use an array prop. Again, if you wanted to put an icon in here or something, you'd kind of be screwed, right? So it's always tricky to figure out like the nicest way to do it. Maybe an array prop is like a good idea though. I kind of think that would be a fun way to do this for now. So why don't we try it that way? And we could just say features equals, and we'll pull this down onto its own line probably. And we'll just kind of grab this content and paste that in here. And then we can build it up in the template. It seems fine. So let's wrap that up. Oh. And then we'll just close that off this way. So we'll just grab this and paste this in for the other two and fix that damn number yet again. Can you convert just the lines into an array dynamically and get rid of some of the markup that way? Yeah, so are you suggesting like pass in a slot that was just the content and then in the component basically parse it out, split it on new lines, and then render that as a computed thing? You could do that, I guess. It might be tricky to do that. It might be tricky to do it not using a render function, but because I don't know if you have access to slots inside of a computed property, but you might. I don't know. I've never tried that. That might be an interesting thing to play with sometime. Okay, so let's make sure that we actually render that out. So let's bring back this features list. And we'll just do v4 feature in features, and this will be feature, and we'll pull in features. So now the question is, what do we want to do about like not having the margin on the bottom item? So there's two ways I can think of to handle that off the top of my head. One is we can say like for feature I in features, Pretty sure that's real syntax. And then we could say like some gross computed thing here, which is like I triple equal features dot length -1, then nothing, otherwise MB1. So this is kind of like one gross way to do it, and that does appear to work. Another way to do it that I think I hate less because it's less verbose is to just always have the MB1 on all of them and just add like a negative margin to the wrapper. So we could just say negative MB1. And that should look the same. So that just kind of balances that out. Use an iMac, yeah, 27-inch iMac, but with the resolution scaled way down for us to do the stream. Okay, cool. All right, so what does that give us now? So now this stuff is customizable. These are clickable, which is kind of cool, although that focus style is kind of gross, but we could think about that later. Maybe, I'm kind of curious, what happens here if I select this and switch to yearly? It resets. I don't think I would want to do that personally. Now, if we wanted to mimic this, we could make it work that way, but I think it would work better is if I chose small business and then said, you know what, I want to pay yearly, if it just kept that one selected. The reason I'm thinking about this is because it affects kind of what the consequences are of choosing this. Like, is this just telling each one of these components that we're using a different prop, like that we're in a different mode? Or does switching to yearly render 3 different cards? Because that's kind of what's happening in this case, right? I think we should keep them as the same card though. Cool. So maybe let's work on the plan selector little toggle switch at the top first. So let's make each one of these spans buttons yet again. And we'll make them button type button. And I can show you kind of, now I'm not an expert at this, but I try to do a pretty good job with how we can make these a little bit more accessible so that the so screen readers sort of interpret this stuff as like a radio button. Let's just get it working first, then we can talk about how to do that extra pieces of markup. Okay, so this is interesting. I made it a button and we lost the text color. Okay, so this is an interesting, this comes back to something we talked about in the previous stream, is like what's safe to put up and have inherited versus what should go on the actual element. So now we're having a problem where like buttons have a default font color that's overriding inheriting from the parent. So to get around that, we need to, man, I've got these things in a weird order. We need to specify it directly. Okay. We should probably make these focus styles less gross, but again, that's something we can think about next maybe. Or maybe as part of just the style improvements when we do the responsive stuff. I think the new Chrome looks nice. I don't know, I'm pretty used to it by now. Okay, so let's do the same thing here where we extract this into a component. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. Let's make a new component. We'll call it something like, I guess it can just be like a toggle, like a schedule toggle, because it's like how often we're paying. So let's try that. Okay, so okay, so we've got this component. Let's import the schedule toggle. And just replace this, I guess. This is going to take a bunch of prompts and stuff too, but we'll see. Okay, so far it still looks the same. So that's good. I don't stream on Twitch because I want everything to be on YouTube, on my YouTube channel anyways. I post my conference talks on YouTube and all that stuff. So this way, everyone who just subscribes on YouTube gets everything. I don't have to have subscribers on Twitch and subscribers on YouTube and then export stuff from Twitch to YouTube. It just doesn't make any sense to me since I have other content that I need to post somewhere and I can't just upload conference talks to Twitch and stuff like that. So YouTube is the place to do it for me. Okay. So we're going to want to make the schedule toggle like a controlled component, probably where the state lives in the parent. So why don't we work on that? So let's have a data property called like schedule that maybe defaults to monthly. And I mean, I guess we can just start by using kind of special strings, although you might want to do something fancier at some point. And we will, I think we could just do something like a V model here. Maybe we'll do it manually first and then refactor to a V model. So we'll say like the schedule or the value is going to be schedule. And then we're going to want to be able to toggle that at some point. So let's just work on getting this passed in first. So we'll have the value come in. And on here, we'll say like on click, we'll say like select monthly. And then we'll do the same thing for yearly. And let's just add a select method, select schedule. And we'll just have this do nothing for now. This doesn't need any of its own data, so we can get rid of that. It's a stateless component. Okay, so let's do some styles. So taking sort of the same approach that we did for the other component, basically what I want to do is try and separate the stuff that is static from the stuff that is based on what is selected. So rounded, we want to keep. BG white, we don't necessarily want to keep. So let's add a class attribute here. And we're going to have two states, right? So we're going to have we could just say like is monthly, maybe. We'll have two computed properties for this. And the reason I'm doing it, this is kind of funky because like these are hard-coded values, you know what I mean? It's not like this is like a dynamic schedule toggle that could have 3 options or anything like that. So this way it keeps it kind of readable. So let's just add some computer properties before we kind of forget what we're doing here. So we'll have is monthly, and this is just going to return this dot value triple equals monthly, and then we'll have is yearly, just do the same thing. We could also just have is active as a, well, we could have is active as like a method and takes a parameter, but that won't get cached the same way. So it is kind of nicer to do it this way. Okay. Okay, so if it's monthly, then we want to pull out these classes. PY1 can stay, uppercase can stay, text center can stay. Okay. And then we got to figure out what the difference is here, right? So if it's not monthly, then we want to have hover text white and hover BG navy. We want to have text navy light. And other than that, I think it's good. Okay, so this is kind of gross too. We're going to have this duplicated. We could break this out into yet another component, but I think I'd rather live with the duplication for a minute here first. Okay, so gotta change this. All right, I knew something was looking weird. Okay, so let's see if with View Dev Tools, we can like do some of this toggling. So here's the plan selector. Here's the schedule toggle. Prop is monthly. I guess we can't change it from here. We can change it here. Let's change this to yearly. Now the other one selects. All right. Okay, so things are kind of wired up right. Cool. Let's keep this open. It'll probably be useful. Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's make it possible to actually change it by clicking on it now. So this select monthly method is what's going to want to do it. So since this is a controlled component and we're not actually storing any data here, we're going to want to fire an event. So we can do something like this, dot emit. Now normally if you would use an input event if you want to be able to bind this with like vModel, which I think is probably a good idea. So we'll bind like an input event and we will pass through the schedule. Now up in the plan selector, we can listen to on input and we can just say schedule equals, I think it's $event. This is kind of like the shorthand way to do it. Let's just kind of see what happens. Yeah, so that's working now. We're not getting any errors. So that's cool. We can also refactor this now to just vModel equals schedule. So we've created like a custom vModel component and it'll just work. That's kind of handy. Okay, so this component I think is good enough. Even though we have this duplication, we could create like a schedule toggle option or something, you know what I mean? And pass that stuff through. But for now, I think it's fine. Maybe we can refactor that later. So now what we want to do is basically pass through this schedule to each plan card. So the plan card knows whether to render its annual or monthly version, right? So let's just pass that through to every single one. So we'll say schedule is schedule. Then in the plan card, we'll accept a schedule prop, which is going to be monthly or yearly. And then let's pass through a yearly price too, actually, since we're going to need to do that to make that work. So let's grab these monthly ones and we'll just say yearly. It's just going to be this with a 0 at the end. So it could have been computed like was mentioned, but I think it's best not to jump to conclusions that are not necessarily true. Like there's no reason why they should all be locked in to always use that formula. I want to be able to just change the yearly price. Maybe for the small business plan, you get a bigger discount for yearly. You know what I mean? Maybe it's 700 or something. If we're using just math to do this, there's no real way to do that. So let's see what's going on here. Did we miss anything? We're not getting any errors, so that's cool. If we look at plan card, we can see that the schedule is monthly. If we select yearly, it changes to yearly. So each card kind of knows which version it should show. So we should be able to go here now and just update this to say price, and we'll make that a computed property maybe. We don't need any data here. So we'll say computed, we'll have a price that returns this dot schedule equals, you know what, let's do this with an array lookup. That'll be cooler, or an object lookup. So it's just going to return an object accessing this dot schedule, and it's going to have keys monthly, which is going to be this dot monthly, and yearly is going to be this dot yearly. You could even just return this at this dot schedule because they happen to be named the same, but this is kind of more explicit, I think. Okay, so we got an error. We're missing a comma down below. Okay, cool. So we got $19 a month. When we switch, it changes. Now it says per month, which is not what we want. So let's change that. So here on the plan card where we have month here, let's change this to this schedule monthly. I mean, this is kind of lame, but it's fine. It's kind of stupid that we're not, kind of grims me out that we're not explicitly checking for yearly and then showing a year. You know what I mean? We're kind of making this assumption, but I think it's okay. It's going to work. So there we go. And is that accurate in terms of terminology? Yeah, so that's pretty good, right? So now why don't we work on getting it so that we can click one of these and have it actually change the selected plan. So that's going to change how we structure some things in the plan selector even, because right now we're just kind of like hard coding in all three of these. And each one of them doesn't have like, they have a name, which is sort of like its unique key or like its ID. And the selected state is just not based on anything. So why don't we make this dynamic? Why don't we add some data here that says like selected plan, and we'll have it default to, we'll just use the name as the key, and we'll just have this be a dynamic value that's selected plan triple equals starter. And this will just kind of be how we do this. If we wanted, we could iterate over some plans here and spit them all out, and this would, you wouldn't have this duplicated string because you'd be able to just access that property from the current item in the loop. But I think I am fine just hard coding them in too. Don't need to make it overly dynamic. Okay, so now this plan card is selected. This is not selected. Yeah, so let's go ahead and make it possible to click on one and actually have it update. So on the plan card, we'll add a @click equals, basically we want to emit select, and then we want to do this name. So then here we can do on select selected plan equals starter, or selected plan equals, I mean, I guess we don't even have to put this button or this click on the card. We could do the click on the actual plan card outside, since we have access to this data here. Might be easier to do it that way to start, honestly. Let's just do it that way to start, and if there's a good reason to refactor it, maybe we can do that. So we'll just do this kind of thing for now. So there's a little bit of duplication everywhere that we're kind of using this component currently, but we can think that through another time if it's actually starts being a problem for us. Okay, so click, nothing happened. Oh yeah, because this is a custom click event. Okay, so let's do, okay, let's just proxy that for now. We could do click.native, but I kind of think, whatever. Let's just emit a select event and update this to be a custom select event. Cool. And if we switch to yearly, it preserves the plan choice. I'm going to get rid of these focus styles. I'm not sure what they're doing here. This is not keyboard accessible at all, so no matter what, we're going to be better than that. Cool. So where are we looking? Plan card. So let's just say focus outline none. So now there's no indication which one we're selected, which is of course not ideal. but we could do something like focus shadow outline, which I think is nicer. This check mark, it's kind of like hollow, which is cool, but it's not practical. It kind of sucks when you do this outline thing because you can see the outline through the check mark. So I think maybe I want to give that a solid color. So here you can see this path. It just has a fill, which is the white. That's not really going to be easy to do that. Okay, so let's not worry about that too much. Now the other thing that sucks about the focus styles is that you get them even when you click. And there are clever ways to kind of set it up so that focus styles are different are only present when you can tell someone's using a keyboard, but it involves doing some like document key listeners and finding out like, okay, someone tried to hit tab or whatever, so they must be trying to use the keyboard, so we should enable kind of outline styles or whatever. But whatever. What am I doing wrong by not using ESLint? What's wrong with the template? It seems to work. Cool. So let's do the same thing for this because these styles look gross too. So schedule toggle. Each one of these buttons will just add this focus outline none, focus shadow outline. Kind of like a nicer. Now actually it looks terrible. So what should we do? We could do like an inner shadow or like something else, but maybe what we'll just do is we'll get rid of this overflow hidden because I don't think we actually do need that. So for the purposes of accessibility, seems kind of nice. I used this.schedule in the template where, oh, I didn't know that was an issue. Everyone should just use JSX for their view components anyways. It's better. Cool. So that's cool. So this is kind of interactive. We can switch between them. Yeah, I think I'm actually fine with where we're at here. I think this is pretty decent in terms of that interactivity. There's always things that we could do to make this, to remove some duplication and stuff like that, probably. But I think in terms of just kind of getting it working, kind of a first pass that's like fairly clean in terms of, we're using controlled components. There's like a single source of truth for all the data, which is in kind of the app component, I think. Or no, where do we do that? In plan selector? So maybe the last step is to move this data up into the view, into the main component. And I only say that because this same data is going to be needed by the form. We're not actually going to bother to do that, but say you actually wanted to make this form work and submit the form, you need to be able to tell your backend what plan they had selected and stuff, right? So the way we have it set up now, that communication can't happen. So let's turn the whole plan selector into a controlled component too. So it'll actually need some of its own props. And all they're really going to have to be is the schedule and selected plan. So you can say schedule and selected plan. Now this goes away. And let's add a methods section. We'll add a method like select plan. And in here previously, we were going to be doing this, right? So let's just grab this. We'll say selected plan. And we'll just refactor these three quickly. We'll try and do this in like a cleanish way. So select plan. And let's just make sure that that's still working, or maybe we broke something else somewhere. What have I messed up now? Return is a reserved word. Oh. Okay, so it's still kind of working, which is kind of what we wanted. So now we can kind of move some of this stuff out to the parent. So instead of selected plan equals plan, let's do this dot emit select, and we'll just pass through the plan. And we're going to want to do the same thing for the schedule at some point. So we'll just start with this though. So we are emitting a select event. So in here, we're going to want to say on select selected plan equals event. Okay, let's just see what we have here. So we're getting an error. Data property schedule is already declared as a prop. Got it. So we got it declared as a prop. Let's not declare it as a prop. Okay, so let's check our view DevTools for a second. Look at our events. It's not being fired. Oh, record. Okay. Selected plan. Let's see. What am I doing wrong here? Plan selector, selected plan is undefined. I thought we were passing that through. Oh, no, we're not. Selected plan. And that's going to be selected plan. Okay. That's more like it. Now this toggle, we need to make that use the stuff from up here. So let's pass through the schedule, which will just default to the schedule that we have. And then we'll also say on, we'll say like change schedule or something. We'll just say schedule equals event as well. And then we'll have to fire a change schedule event whenever this changes. So we're not going to be able to use vModel here anymore. So we're going to have to say value is schedule. And on input, we want to emit a schedule. What the hell did I call it? It's change schedule event. Passing through the event. See where we're at. Okay, so that doesn't work. Schedule equals event. Okay. Change schedule. Is it because it cares about the hyphenation? What am I doing wrong here? Okay, plan selector, firing a change schedule event. The app is listening for a change schedule event. It's saying schedule equals event. And is it because this still has data? Yes, that's why. Dummy. Cool. Yeah. Not bad. Okay. That feels pretty good. Cool. So maybe the very last thing that we'll do is just like do a little bit of responsive tweaking on this, because obviously this isn't ideal. So honestly, I don't think this is going to be that complicated. I think the main thing is just like once we're down to maybe a screen, maybe we'll do a couple things. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking out here, let's stack them on small screens. So we'll make this small flex wrap and small width 1/2. I guess actually an easier way is just to say width full SM width 1/2, and actually you don't really need this either. Okay. And maybe medium screens, we want to do that. Okay, stacks. Oddly though, we're not getting, things aren't being full width the way that I would kind of expect. So why is this not full width? It's because we need to flex one it maybe. That doesn't seem right though. Probably because it needs an explicit width full. Yeah, okay. One thing I noticed here, they have like a little bit of extra info. They have your information. So maybe we'll throw that on ours too. So let's get this down to a decent size here. All right, so let's throw your information under there. I can just throw that here, probably as an H2 as well. And we'll just give this a class of MD hidden, I guess. That'll be like a start. So there it is. Text center, text white, font semi-bold or something. Probably text 2XL. XL? Medium, not semi-bold. Some margin underneath it, like MB6, something like that. 4 maybe. Now, I wonder why we're getting this extra. Oh, you know what this is? This is because we have that padding at the top, right? To match the padding on the other element. So if we wanted to, we could only make this happen on big screens, and then things are going to be tighter. But I almost kind of think what would be nice is to do like an MB6 here, then like an MB0, and do it the same sort of way. So we get a little bit of spacing, but it's coming from a different sort of definition, which to me makes more sense that this element, we're putting margin below it rather than adding padding to the top of this. But then when we get back to regular screens, we still have everything kind of lined up the way we wanted. Something I was kind of curious about is what happens on theirs when this gets longer. Okay, so they're not doing any magic trickery to get this stuff the right height. It's just like, kind of like ours, kind of just good fortune that things end up being pretty close to equal height, which is cool. Although it doesn't seem like it's equal height anymore. Did we change something that made us lose that? Remember these used to be like basically the same height? I didn't notice when that changed. Did anyone notice when that changed? Did it have anything to do with me adding this H2? I wonder when that changed. Very odd. Maybe it didn't change. Maybe it was always like that. I don't know. Don't know. Does anyone remember? Like, I swear we used to have this be like the same height as that. All right, I'm not going to worry about it too much. Maybe I'll go back to the video afterwards and see if I can figure out where that change happened. But that looks, I mean, I've seen things look worse. I think we could have a little bit of padding at the bottom of this form. PB 8. I don't know, something like that. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be at the bottom of the form either. The more I think about it, it probably could just be on the content area. Probably here. You could have like a PB 12 or something like that, just so that you always have a little bit of extra space. So even if we were to go like this, you know, something like that, it'd be good. When I made them buttons. Interesting. So when I made these buttons, they got shorter. That's interesting. Okay, let's see. So if this is a div, it goes back to that height. And when I make them buttons, they get smaller. So I wonder what is the difference. I wonder if it's a line height thing. 1.15. So buttons have a different line height. So let's just give this, let's fix the line height to letting tight. See if that changes it. Yeah, there we go. Done. Beautiful. Now what do they do for font size? Gets smaller. Okay. So we could do that too. We could change the headline font size to maybe get a bit smaller on Demdare mobile screens. Looks like we don't even have a font size set on that. Bad Adam. So maybe we'll do like text XL, then like MD text 3XL. Too small. 2XL. SM text 3XL. Yeah. Now all these seem too big too, if I'm being perfectly honest, but they don't change on this site, so. Cool. Well, I think that's probably pretty good. That's like an hour of work. We got like the view stuff kind of working, made it responsive. Maybe let's just fix the outline on that yellow button and then call it a day. So we can do the same thing. Focus, outline none, focus, shadow outline. Yeah, so now we get like a nicer outline style, one that actually follows the border radius. And whatever, that's a link, can stay that way. Cool. So I'm going to put this on GitHub for anybody who wants to check it out after the fact. And yeah, thanks for checking out the stream. Hopefully I can come up with an idea for another fun one like this that we can do. This one was kind of nice because usually we do these like really big interfaces where we just spend all our time doing CSS. This is kind of fun because we got to do something a little bit, you know, with a little bit smaller scope. So we got to go a little bit further and do some interactivity stuff and fun stuff like that. So thanks for coming to check out the stream, and hopefully I can do another one. I probably won't do another one until after I get back from Australia, because I leave for Australia next weekend to go to Laracon AU. So probably like first week in November, maybe we can do another one. All right, everyone. Thanks for checking out the stream. See you next time.